No, you didn't misread the title of this video. It is called How Not to Debone a Pork Butt. This is a video that frankly I didn't intend to show you. And then one day I was talking with my friend Harry Sue of Slappy Daddy Barbecue, told him I'd made this video but wasn't going to publish it, and he said, no, you need to publish it. I challenge you to publish it so that people can see the mistakes that you sometimes made. That's almost as interesting as doing things successfully. So based on his challenge, I've gone ahead and published it for you to take a look. Let me give you some background. I don't typically debone pork butts for barbecue. Either I buy them boneless at Costco because that's how they come, or I buy them bone-in at some other store. In this particular case, though, I was not making barbecue. I was making a recipe called pork ADOVADA, which is 1-inch pieces of pork butt that are braised in a chili sauce, and it's delicious. I'll post a link to the recipe in the description of the video. But it requires that you take the bone out of a pork butt and then cut it up into 1-inch pieces and take out a bunch of the fat that's in there. And I went to the supermarket, and I would have preferred a boneless pork butt, but all I could find was bone-in. So I thought, no problem, I'll come home and I'll take the bone out. And I had a very simple instruction here from Cook's Illustrated magazine, and I'll just read to you how they say to take the bone out of a pork butt. It says, position meat with fat cap facing up and visible part of the bone facing you. Insert boning knife just above the bone, and with short sweeping strokes, follow the contour of the bone to separate the meat. Step 2. Once the meat has been separated on the top side, flip pork butt over and repeat on the other side until bone is completely detached and can be easily removed with your hand. Well, that sounds simple, but it is really not that simple. Let me show you what we're trying to dig out of this piece of meat here. This is the blade bone, the scapula of a pork butt. And you can see it's kind of a complex shape, and it has a lot of different curves, and one side is flat and one side has this little wave effect here on the top. And here you can see this bone I just showed you laid out next to the pork butt that I was going to debone. You can see that there's this flat side to the bone right here that's been cut during the butchering process. That's the surface that you see sticking out the end of this roast in this picture. And in the next picture, you can see this sort of oval end of the bone. It's protruding from the side of the roast. Now, just for interest, you can determine whether this is a left side or a right side pork butt based on the orientation of these bones. When you're looking at the roast with the fat cap up and that wider flat cut facing you, if the bone is protruding from the left side of the roast, this roast came from the left side of the pig. It's the pig's left shoulder. If we flip this image over and you're looking fat cap up at the cut end facing you, that oval-shaped bone coming out the right side of the pork butt, that's the right side of the pig. That's a right side pork butt. Just a little trivia for you. As it turned out, the process of removing this bone was a lot harder than Cook's Illustrated described it in their 2 short paragraphs. So to start, what you're going to do, as they said in those instructions, is come in at this corner with a sharp boning knife, and you're going to try to ride your knife across this surface and up the underside of this, let's call it a wave for lack of a better term, come up underneath the wave of this bone, over the top, and then down the back side. And you're going to try to clear the meat all the way back to here and around this edge. Then you're going to flip the pork butt over, and you're going to come in this way and try to separate the meat off this flat surface here. Once you've done that, you can pull this bone right out of the pork butt. But that's a lot easier said than done. So without further ado, let me show you the video. I will speed it up in a few places to save you some of the misery that goes on. And I will narrate in a few places to let you know what's happening. Here we go. So, to my credit, I have a very sharp boning knife. This is a Forstner boning knife, very flexible. You see here, I'm trying to come in at the corner of the roast, and I'm trying to separate the meat from that complex curved shape on that wave side of the bone. And you can see here that I've already kind of hacked up some of that meat right there because I came in high above the bone and then I came in low below the bone. So I've got this thin sliver of meat now that I have, and there again I cut right into it. So I'm kind of mincing this meat right above the bone instead of getting a clean cut. And you see here I'm going over to the other side of the bone and I'm trying to clear the meat off of that surface, and for some reason I can't really get a good cut on that side. Now little bits are falling out onto the cutting board and there's little bits inside. I'm not getting clean cuts inside the roast here. Disaster is going to ensue at some point. Here again, I'm trying to separate the meat on the other side. There's a little more progress right there. I did find the right spot, but now I'm coming back to the other side. You can see again, the knife is above the curvature of the bone, so I'm leaving meat behind on the bone. Now I'm beginning to curve the knife up a little bit. You can see there I was trying to go up the surface of that wave. Confused, I go back to the other side. Confused, I come back to the curved side. Now let's speed it up. I don't want to waste too much of your time working up the curvature of that bone, trying to open this up to get better visualization of what's happening inside. Chunks of meat falling out from inside the roast. Again, back to the other edge of that bone, trying to find some separation. Let's tip it up on its end. See if I get better leverage this way. But now I am cutting up the surface of that wave part of the bone, trying to find my way to the top knob at the top of that bone. And it looks like I'm getting close. And here we're going to slow the video back down again, and you can see there I've exposed the top edge of that wave on the bone. That's that knob that's stuck up in the air. Now I'm cutting down the back side of it, trying to separate the meat from the back side of that wave portion of the bone, and then trying to find there's a flat surface again at the back of the bone, trying to work my way down to that flat surface on the back side of the bone. Pulling things away with my fingers, trying to get a better visualization of where that bone is. Now let's speed it back up again. We're going to take this all the way back to the back edge of the bone. I did find the surface. And now here with some short little strokes, I'm separating the meat from the back edge of that bone. So I've cleared the meat off the entire top surface of that blade bone. And I've separated the meat at the back edge of the bone as well with a shallow cut. Now I'm going to come in underneath the bone and try to separate on that more flat underside. You can see here, speeding up again, this is a bit easier task, but again, I don't keep the knife really close to the bone, so I do get some little separate flaps and things that are just hanging on the meat there. I don't get a nice clean cut. And here I found, again, the back edge of the bone, and I'm going to separate it from the roast in just a moment here. This is the final cut. Now let's listen to what I have to say. Look at that. That's the worst hack job in the world. That's why you do not try this at home, folks. Leave this to the professionals. Here's the bone. I have left some meat on the bone here, so this should have stayed with the pork, but there's a whole bunch of meat around the edges here that I've missed. You see meat inside the bone, a little bit on the back side here, but what's not on the bone here is basically sort of shredded on the inside of this pork butt. Now, if you were going to, tie this up, it probably doesn't matter too much, but and for my purposes, I'm going to turn this into a stew, and I'm going to cut this into chunks, so I don't care too much. But if you were trying to turn this into something that you were going to barbecue, boy, you would definitely have to tie it together and not be too concerned about the fact that the inside of this has been run through a wood chipper. And here's a final shot of the bone I removed on the right versus the bone that I showed you earlier in this video. I'm not really all that unhappy with how much meat I left on the bone, because I think as a first timer, I did pretty good in that respect, but I'm more disappointed in how those cuts were made and how they affected the roast. The roast was just sort of shredded and looked very amateurish. But you know what? I'm an amateur. I've never done this before, so I guess I shouldn't be too disappointed. And for my purposes of a pork stew, it worked out just fine. It didn't matter really how much I shredded up that inside meat. It all got parsed out and cut up into 1 inch or 1.5 inch chunks for my stew. So at the end of the day, everything was edible and it all came out in the end okay. And I didn't lose any fingers in the process of trying to cut that roast, so thank goodness for that. And by the way, if you're looking for a better video example of how to remove the bone from a pork butt, I've included a link in the description of this video. Check it out. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you got something out of it. I at least got pork stew out of it, so that was a good thing. I want to thank you for watching. I appreciate you very much. Please like and subscribe to our videos. It helps other people find them. And until next time, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.